ran, you have to envision that cable would have went from the top of that car right there, straight on up to the ceiling of that second level, went through a pulley system, come down to this incline right here, hit another pulley, would have came down this way, and that hoist I just ran would have actually sat right here. Okay? Ladder on your left there, that's your secondary escape. Now if you were in a hurry to get material up there and the hoist was busy, you could always use this ladder system here. Now you can see most of it's gone. You have to envision that ladder would have went straight up the vertical, up that raise, up to that second level. This also became your emergency escape. Now if the cable should have broke on that, hoistman got PO'd and walked out the mine, you're up on that second level, that's going to be your option to get down right there. Okay, now obviously everything in here stays wet all the time. Wood, timbers just don't last in here. So anytime you took this ladder down, you really had no idea what condition it was in. You were taking your chances. But again, rather than spend the night up on that second level, you're probably going to come down that ladder. Okay, now any questions? Okay, now earlier I was talking about when they would hand steel into the mountain. That actually started in 1875 up at level 5, 4 levels up above us. That's where they initially started in. They found a visible quartz vein up there. The way they found it was by 2 miners just walking back and forth across the face of this mountain. It was very visible. They seen it, realized that that's where they were going to start in. That's where they started in. Now obviously once they got so far back in, they've lost the light of the portal. They're going to need artificial light to work by. Now in 1875, this is exactly what they would have had. It's a wrought iron candle holder. Each man would have brought his own candle holder, brought his own candles, his matches, his water, whatever to do his day's work. Now in about 10 years this became obsolete because in the about 1885 or so, we had a large influx of Welsh coal miners come over from Europe to this area. This wasn't new, just hadn't come into play here yet, but they brought this idea with them. These are carbide lamps. These are actually invented in England as bicycle lights. What you'd have had is carbide in the bottom. Carbide is a mined product. You'd have put water in the top. This one has a drip control on it that would regulate how much water fell on that carbide. Water and carbide, when they mix, create acetylene gas. Acetylene gas burns very bright, also burns with a bit of heat. But a big improvement over this. Okay, now these lights actually would have been used right up to the 1940s in small mining operations. Now you got into something larger like this mine here. You've got investors. Obviously they're going to see that you've got the best equipment you can have. What they're trying to do is recover metals. They're not going to have you BSing with a little light like this. You're going to be set up with the proper equipment. But small operations, 6, 8, 10, 12 guys, you're still going to be using this because you don't have that kind of money to invest in new equipment. Now a lot of miners would still use these today. Most of them have gone to something like this, your self-contained battery light. All you have to do is put these on a charger every night. They're ready to go for at least 8 to 10 hours. So it's even a big improvement over this. Okay, now any questions about anything else here? Nothing from anybody. Okay, either I'm thorough or you're totally disinterested.
Where would you put that candle when you're going to hold it? Would you stick it in the wall? Or?
That's a very good idea. Back in the early days, same thing. The miners didn't have hard hats, they wore felt hats. The only reason they wore felt is it deflected the water. Water didn't soak into the felt, pretty much just run off like a duck's back. You could actually, with that hook hanging in your hat, now if you had any timbers in your mine, you could stick it in a timber like that. Any crack, any fissure in the wall would also hold this. Free your hands up, allow you to work. Any other questions on the job? So we're going to run through this in basic ideas. Ask anything you want to, because I'm not going to be able to cover everything. Okay, now this is a typical pattern that you would have started into the face of the mountain with. In fact, you would have used this continuously on end. They had about 5 distinct patterns that they would drill into a face. This one's called a diamond pattern. Now why you use distinct patterns is because what you want to do is when you blow that face out, you want your ore to come out in a fairly uniform size. Now through these patterns, they did it through trial and error. They learned that these certain patterns brought that ore out in a fairly uniform size, 15 to 45 pounds a piece. That's what you wanted. So again, this is the diamond pattern. Now you have to envision each hole here is going to be drilled 6 foot deep. Your first hole in is going to determine that you're still into that vein that you want to be in. You drilled that hole, determine that. You're going to start drilling your pattern around this wooden rod. Now each hole you drill, you want it to be as parallel to that rod as you can make it. Again, because by the time you get 6 foot deep, if you haven't run parallel with that rod, your holes can end up this far apart. They could have crossed over each other. When you blow that face out, you have no idea what size ore is going to come out of there. So again, through trial and error, they learned that this pattern worked perfectly. So you've drilled all your holes. Each hole is going to have 6 sticks of dynamite in it. First stick of dynamite in each hole is going to have your blasting cap. Now blasting caps are numbered 1 through 15. What you want when you blast, you want each individual pattern to blow a millisecond from the next one. You don't want just one large explosion because nothing's going to come out of the wall. You'll still fracture that wall. It's not going to come out for you. So by putting your earlier caps, your number 1s or number 2s in the very center here, then you're going to work out to your 3s, your 4s. Your larger numbers are going to end up on the outside. Your largest number that you're using in your caps is going to be used at the bottom. So what's going to happen, you plunge this one time. Obviously it didn't set here. Ideally it would have set back about where we got off the train back there. Push the plunger one time. That's going to start your detonation pattern. Your 1s are going to go first and then on out. It's basically going to go boom, 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 boom. They're all going to be spaced. That gives every individual pattern time to shift a little bit, loosen up. Now the last ones down here, called your lifters, they're drilled parallel with everything else, but they're also drilled at a slight angle up. These go off last. That entire face has been fractured. These go off, it lifts that ore right out here on the floor where you can get it loaded up, get it out of the way, and start that pattern again. So we can all get out. Any questions?
That's good right here, guys.
Okay, now if you remember I told you when we first unloaded, we were about 1/3 mile in. This actually goes back another mile here. Now it's quite a ways. Now, I'm sure all of you know there's 5,280 foot in a mile. You're gaining 2 of those blast patterns a shift. As a rule, you're looking at about 12 foot depth you gain into the mountain each time, each shift. Well, in this case, we got a mile here, so you're basically looking at 860 to 880 different detonation patterns to do this mile. If you're only doing one shift, that breaks down to about 440 working days, roughly a year and a third to do a mile in this stuff. Wow. Very time consuming. Okay, now the water here, since we have a good view of it, is potable. You could actually drink this water. You're not allowed to. There's no fluoride in it or other chemicals and stuff. But it really is very potable. The only thing that could possibly be wrong with this water right now is if there was giardia, which means that up on some upper level somewhere an elk has fallen in and his carcass is laying in the water, rotting away. But that you wouldn't know that unless you actually tested it or drank it and got giardia. Okay, now any questions about anything we've covered so far?
Where is this coming from?
It's all just percolating right down from the top of the mountain. Right now, a majority of it's coming from snow melt, but this runs year round. This water never ever quits. Okay, also the temperature in here, constant, 46 to 47 degrees. varies no more than a half degree. This machine right here, the orange one I'm standing in front of is called a slusher. Now this is just one way of moving ore in this mine. You could have brought this in, strung it out down that tunnel as far as you could have, dropped ore down the chute onto this end, you'd have brought this bucket up,